The courtroom was silent, except for the clicking of cameras and the low hum of whispers. At the defense table sat Marcus Hall, a calm, composed black attorney with eyes that carried both intelligence and experience. Across from him, Richard Calloway, the city's most notorious prosecutor. White suit, white smile, white arrogance. When Calloway leaned back in his chair and muttered, "He's not even qualified for this courtroom," everyone heard it, and by the end of the trial, everyone would regret laughing, because when Marcus finally stood up to speak, the courtroom gasped, the jury froze, and the prosecutor's smirk vanished forever. It was the biggest financial scandal in the city's history, millions of taxpayer dollars missing from a redevelopment fund. At the center of it all was Elliot Granger, a middle-aged accountant accused of funneling money into fake shell companies. Prosecutor Calloway loved the cameras. He'd already held 3 press conferences before the trial even started, telling reporters, "This case is open and shut. We got the evidence, the witnesses, and the confession." But what he didn't mention was that Elliot never confessed, and that the so-called evidence came from one anonymous source. The public wanted blood. The judge, Judge Melanie Grant, a stern woman with decades on the bench, was determined to keep order. When the trial opened, Calloway strutted to the jury box. His tone was smooth, condescending, rehearsed. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "this is not a complicated case. This is about greed, about betrayal of the public trust." He threw a cold glance toward Marcus. "And I trust the defense won't waste your time trying to twist facts that speak for themselves." The courtroom chuckled softly. Marcus didn't react. He simply stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and approached the jury. "You just heard a story," he said quietly, "a confident one. But confidence doesn't make something true." His tone was calm, deliberate. "Over the next few days, you'll see numbers, documents, signatures. But you'll also see what's missing, timestamps, access logs, and truth." He paused, eye steady. "And when this is over, you won't just question the evidence. You'll question the man presenting it." Calloway scoffed audibly. "Spare us the drama, counselor." The judge glared. "Mr. Calloway, you will show respect." He raised his hands innocently. "Just calling it like I see it, Your Honor. This man doesn't even meet the standard for federal defense." Gasps filled the room. Marcus said nothing, but his jaw tightened ever so slightly. He turned back to the jury. "Let's begin." The prosecution called its first witness, a city finance auditor named Janice Porter. She testified confidently about irregularities in several projects linked to Elliot. She pointed to charts, bank records, and spreadsheets projected on a large screen. The evidence looked airtight. When Calloway finished, he turned smugly to Marcus. "Your witness." Marcus stood, slow and measured. He didn't carry notes, just a single file folder. "Ms. Porter," he began softly, "you reviewed every transaction personally, correct?" "Yes." "And these logs are maintained on the city's primary server?" "Correct." "Do those logs show timestamps for every transaction?" "Yes." Marcus stepped closer. "Then can you explain why 3 transactions occurred at 11:37 p.m. on August 12th, when your department was closed?" The room stirred. Ms. Porter blinked. I'm not sure what you're referring to." "You're not sure?" Marcus asked gently. "Then you must not have reviewed the backup copy, because the main log was altered." Calloway shot to his feet. "Objection! Speculation!" Judge Grant frowned. "Overruled. Continue, Mr. Hall." Marcus walked toward the screen. "Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution's witness said these records prove my client's guilt, but someone tampered with them, someone who had access when the office was closed." He pulled out a document. "This is a server report from the city's IT vendor. It shows remote logins from an external consultant, a man on the prosecution's own witness list." A collective gasp. Calloway's expression twisted. He whispered something to his assistant, red-faced. Marcus calmly walked back to his table. No further questions. The next day, whispers filled the courthouse. Reporters circled like vultures. Who was this unqualified defense attorney? What no one in that room knew, not even Judge Grant, was Marcus Hall's past. He wasn't just some small-time lawyer from the South Side. He was a former military legal officer, a JAG Corps veteran. He defended soldiers in war crimes tribunals, navigated life-and-death cross-examinations, and exposed corruption that reached the Pentagon. But after a whistleblowing scandal that cost him his commission, Marcus left the military and vanished into quiet private practice. He never sought fame. He only sought truth. And now, he was facing a man who represented everything he despised: power, arrogance, and the belief that justice belonged to privileged. Mid-trial, Calloway was unraveling. He called witness after witness, city officials, accountants, even a former intern, all painting Elliot as a thief. But each time, Marcus quietly dissected their stories. No theatrics, no shouting, just surgical precision. Finally, it was Marcus's turn to call a witness. He called Detective Luis Ramirez, the lead investigator. Calloway objected, saying the defense hadn't disclosed this witness in time. Marcus handed the judge a document. "Your Honor, we filed notice last week." The state failed to acknowledge it. The judge nodded. "Proceed." Detective Ramirez took the stand, visibly uneasy. Marcus began softly. "Detective, did you personally collect the digital evidence in this case?" "Yes." "And did you also file the chain of custody report?" "Yes." Marcus picked up a folder. "Would you read the time you logged that report?" "August 15th, 9:32 a.m. "Interesting," Marcus said, "because your supervisor signed it at 8:15 a.m. That means it existed before you wrote it." The detective froze. Calloway's face went pale. "Detective," Marcus said, "did you receive any instruction to alter those timestamps?" I was told it was a formatting issue," the detective muttered. "By whom?" A pause. The silence was deafening. "By Prosecutor Calloway." Gasps filled the courtroom. Judge Grant slammed her gavel. "Order! Order!" By the 5th day of trial, the tide had turned completely. Marcus called his final witness, a cybersecurity expert who confirmed that the evidence logs had been altered using an administrator account linked to the prosecutor's office. The courtroom was stunned. Calloway's career, his image, his arrogance were crumbling. When Marcus delivered his closing statement, the room hung on every word. "They call me unqualified. They said I didn't belong here. But justice doesn't belong to a title. It belongs to truth. And the truth is this man," he gestured to his client, "was framed to protect someone powerful." He turned toward Calloway. "And when the powerful abuse justice, it's not just one man on trial. It's the system itself." Judge Grant looked visibly moved. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Not guilty. Elliot broke down in tears. Marcus just sat back, calm, expression unreadable. Judge Grant turned to him. "Mr. Hall, this court owes you an apology." Calloway, red-faced and defeated, stormed out without a word. His career was over. As the reporters swarmed Marcus outside the courthouse, one shouted, "Mr. Hall, how does it feel to beat the city's best prosecutor?" He smiled faintly. "Justice isn't about winning," he said. "It's about truth. And truth doesn't care who's wearing the better suit." The clip of Calloway calling Marcus unqualified went viral. Millions watched as the man who mocked him became the subject of a criminal investigation himself. Marcus didn't give interviews. He went back to the small office, the same desk, the same quiet determination. Because for him, every case was the same battle, not against people, but against the arrogance that hides behind power. And in Courtroom 6B that day, power lost, truth won, and justice, real justice, stood tall.